We have been telling you about the state's efforts to fill a budget shortfall, but the city of Grand Rapids faces a very similar problem. This morning, Grand Rapids City Manager Greg Sundstrom said that the city may face a deficit of almost $21 million next year. Sundstrom and other city leaders say that both residents and city leaders need to think about what's important and prepare for possible cuts. The city has had a budget deficit for 9 straight years, but leaders say next year's may be the worst that they have seen.
While the state budget has yet to be finalized, schools that depend on the state for money have already started the school year, and they've cut some programs since they just don't know how much they're going to get.
24-Hour News 8's Tony Tagliavia has been looking into this story. Tony's live at a Wyoming school with more on the impact.
Good evening, Brian. The situation is much like what we've reported with the Michigan Promise Scholarships. It's not that the cuts are definite, but that with the school year already underway, districts don't know how much money they'll get from their primary funding source, the state. The delay is having an impact in the classroom.
That took him to a brand new space.
Today is the first parent-free day of preschool for these Wyoming children. There are 60 to 70 students in the classrooms at the Huntington Woods Early Childhood Center, down from the usual 144.
And we have reduced the amount of sections by 50% as we are continuing to wait to see what the state rolls out for their budget.
Wyoming Public Schools has a waiting list of anxious parents waiting to get their kids inside the classrooms. The cuts came after the Republican-controlled state Senate passed a budget that cuts all funding for preschool in the state. The Democrat-controlled House and governor haven't agreed to the cuts, but the schools aren't taking the chance that all the funding will be gone. Godwin Heights cut its preschool programs in half as well, and so is West Michigan's largest district, Grand Rapids Public Schools.
That is a major cut that impacts hundreds and hundreds of families.
An even larger issue looms. Districts have planned on school funding being flat for this year compared to last, expecting the state to use federal stimulus dollars. But the state Senate budget cuts $110 per student. It all could mean a $6 million mid-year loss for GRPS.
But it likely would look at mid-year layoffs.
We asked Governor Granholm this summer if she would support a law that would require the state's school aid budget to be done by July. Later in the summer, she said this.
So that there should be, some sort of penalty. If you don't get the school aid fund done by, July 1st, then maybe you start docking people's pay.
There is now a legislative proposal to force lawmakers to do the school budget by July 1st.
That's one budget I think we've got to get done and get resolved earlier rather than later.
There was a similar legislative proposal recently. This one seems to have some bipartisan support, at least the idea of it. But there are a couple of issues. At least one leading lawmaker suggested that even if a law were passed to get that school budget done earlier, lawmakers might find some way to sneak around it and still wait. And secondly, superintendents say that the issue isn't just knowing at the start of the school year, but knowing that once the state hands down a number telling them how much money they'll get per student, that number has to stay the same throughout the school year. We'll continue to follow the budget process. Live in Wyoming, Tony Tagliavia, 24-Hour News 8.